Dr. Nate Samuelson. He is a graduate of Northwestern Sciences University in Bloomington. His specialty and his interest is in those chronic issues that kind of plague so many people. And as he began his career, he could see that there were some clinics where people would get better with their chronic conditions, and they were really good at managing chronic conditions, and other clinics that weren't. So he kind of directed his attention toward the clinics that help people recover from these chronic conditions. He's done postdoctoral training in functional blood chemistry analysis, thyroid dysfunction, and he is continuing his education to becoming a chiropractic neurologist. In the video that we watched that was on the website, the danielplan.com website for this week, Dr. Mark Hyman said something that was interesting. He said that the things that make us sick are also the things that make us fat. If we fix the things that are the underlying causes of disease, then you will automatically lose weight. And that's what Dr. Samuelson's talk is going to be about tonight. So let's welcome Dr. Samuelson.
People in front row need that. So good evening, everyone. So is anyone excited to talk tonight?
Yes.
Good. You're not afraid of it, or what's that? Good. What did you say?
Always.
Oh, good. Me too. I'm excited.
Finally.
So hope you're not afraid that I'm going to tell you you can't eat anything, because that's not the case. So before we begin, I want you guys to watch a video. It's actually from the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. I want to get your guys' impressions afterwards. So let's go ahead and start with that video here real quick. All right, what did you guys think about that video? What are some of the thoughts that came to your guys' minds when you watched that?
What do you say?
Well, that's no good.
I felt bad for him, the
Yeah.
truck driver. I thought, yeah, he's just got a sedentary life. He probably is just locked in. And
Yeah. Anyone else?
Drastic.
Yeah, drastic changes. Did anyone want to start a diet like that to change their life? A few people? Okay. Would you guys like to do that for the rest of your lives? That type of diet?
No.
No. Okay. Usually that's what happens whenever we see diets. They're meant as short-term things. We don't want to do them for the rest of our life. It's because we don't have a goal. It's what we talk about setting our whys. For them, it was their health, their children. So they had a why behind it. And the reason why we don't get healthy is because we don't have that why. One of the reasons why is because I think we've forgotten the real reason why we do things. We've forgotten the basics. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to get back to the basics. And we're going to start off with some of the basics with understanding what God says about our bodies. But unfortunately, when we don't have the basics, we get confused about nutrition. We hear about diets, we hear about confusing information. So can you guys tell me what confuses you guys about eating healthy or nutrition? Yeah?
Well, something on the outside can look like it's going to be really good for you, and then you got to read the label, and that's just like so much work.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff out there is deceptive, right?
Very.
Well,
So,
even
yep.
in we heard you're supposed to eat brown rice, and then my daughter says, no, you've got to eat the balsamic white rice, but you have to fry it in a pan first, because then that turns it into protein. I mean, there's just
there's so much to know.
it's changing, but it's a lot to know.
Well, it's hard to sift through what's legitimate and what's quackery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It is difficult. The age of information has made it really confusing because you have too much, right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're going to get down to the basics. So first, we're going to figure out what God says about your guys' bodies, what He has planned for you. And then we're going to talk about a principle eating for three. So it's not just eating for yourselves. We're going to talk about what food is, and then we're going to talk about how to eat, and then finally we're going to follow up with a very important component to this session that we have tonight is the workshop on Saturday. So let's go ahead and begin with what God says about your body. So just to give you some context about 1 Corinthians here. So it's in 1 Corinthians, and Paul is writing to the Corinthians. At this time, they're dealing with something called dualism. Dualism is the belief that you could do whatever you wanted with your body as long as you were praising God with your spirit. So there was a separation between the two. And so that's what the church in Corinth was dealing with. So what God says is something completely different. You have to behave counterculturally. So it says, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Food for the stomach, and the stomach for food. But God will destroy them both. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. By his power God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will also raise us. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a man commits are outside his body, but he who sins sexually sins against his own body. Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You are bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. So there's some pretty powerful words to tell us that, first of all, we are only managers. So we're stewards. You heard Aaron speak about what a steward was. A steward isn't someone who owns anything. He is essentially the head slave. And so we're the head slaves of our body. Two great examples are the story of Joseph. Joseph was the steward or the head slave in Potiphar's house. Now, Joseph didn't own anything, but he controlled everything that went on in Potiphar's house. Potiphar had no control, didn't micromanage him or anything like that. The same thing applies with the parable of the talents. Now, in this one, the master gave the servants talents and expected them to use them. Later, he asked them what they did with that. They didn't own that money, they were managing that money. And again, that's where we are with our bodies. We are managing them. And so that comes back to what are we doing to our bodies when we eat improperly? Are we putting the wrong focus? So many of us love food. Many of us focus on that as a driving force, that it has to taste good, that I can't live without my donuts, I can't live without my pizza. It just doesn't the same. I want real food. Well, we have to eat to live. That's the paradigm shift that we're going to work on here tonight, not living to eat. Because it comes back to, these bodies aren't your own. They are God's. And it says that these bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. And just like sexual immorality is sinning against the body, by eating improperly, you're also working against the bodies. You're working against the church itself. You're working against the temple of the Holy Spirit. Again, you're not your own. So if you're not your own, don't you think that makes you accountable for what you do with your body? Absolutely. So on the last day, God is going to essentially see what you did with all of your gifts. Not just the gifts that you were given spiritually, but financially, but also physically with your body. I know on the last day, I want to be one of those people where he says, well done, good faithful servant. I gave you this, and you did what you were supposed to. Now, it's not going to get us into heaven. That's not the reason why we do this. Only salvation does that. But don't you think that it should be our goal to please God with our bodies, the gifts that he's given us, to actually use those gifts for his glory and for his benefit? So that's really the foundation of eating healthy. And so that phrase, behave counterculturally. So what do you guys hear when on TV they tell you, this is what you need? So can you guys think of anything? Like, let's say they say you need a new car. What's some of the phrases that you guys hear? Maybe you deserve it.
You deserve it.
That's right. Do something nice for yourself, right? It's all about me. It's not about God. It's not about anyone else other than yourself. And that's where, so again, don't need to live, but to eat, but it comes down to the principle of eating for three. So it's not just yourselves anymore. So it says in 1 Corinthians 13:11 that when you were a kid, you behaved like a kid. But then when you grew up, you put childish ways behind you. You acted like a man. Well, when you grow up, I have a 2-year-old son. He's pretty selfish. I don't know if anyone here has young kids, but they're selfish. Kids are selfish, right? Absolutely. As you grow up, you have to lose that selfishness because everything that you do doesn't just impact you anymore. It impacts those around you. Maybe friends for a while, so while you're in college or high school. But eventually it becomes your family. You have kids, spouse, and then your close friends again. and in your extended family. But oftentimes we forget about God. That's the third part of the equation, is that it's you, your family, and God. Those are the reasons why you eat. That's the principle of eating for three. So when we eat, we need to keep that in mind. So we briefly talked about some of the things that make it difficult. You mentioned all the information that's out there, right? All the information on the internet. You've got one expert saying one thing, now you've got another expert telling you this and that. I think one of the reasons why it's difficult is the abundance of diets. Now I'm going to ask you guys to name off some diets. So, can you guys, which one? There we go. That's a popular one. Anyone else? Yep. Anyone?
Mediterranean.
Yep. That's been in the news recently. Anyone else?
Weight Watchers.
Yep.
South Beach.
Yep.
Better fast.
Mm-hmm. Anyone heard of the pasta diet? You walk up past at the table, you walk up past in the fridge. No, no one? That's the seafood. That's the other one I was thinking of. See, I like that one. I see food, I eat it. That's a good diet. Sorry, my humor isn't the greatest. I'm a doctor. You know, it's like accountants, so I apologize for that. So there's an abundance of diets. So can you guys tell me one thing that all of these diets have in common? And don't say food. I know one of you was going to say food. It was probably you're probably going to say food, right?
I'm gonna say diet.
Oh, so close. What do you guys think? Yeah,
Well, is it just that it's short term and not
that's one commonality. Yes.
long term?
Yep. Actually,
They don't work long run.
Everyone works as long as you work.
Actually, they all worked for someone. So every single one of these diets worked for someone. Now, the reason why they don't work for everyone is because not everyone's body is created the same. What works for you isn't going to work for you. Just like when we talk about food and we give you a general guideline, what we tell you isn't for everyone. You have to modify it to your body. So that's the reason why these don't work. Yes. One of the shortfalls is that it's short term. You're not going to do a lot of these diets for the rest of your life. Well, if you're going to be healthy, you actually have to do it for the rest of your life. Actually, you should want to do it for the rest of your life. But that's unfortunately what diets are. And oftentimes when you're dieting, it's, well, I want to get my beach body back. I don't know how many of you want their beach bodies back, but but it's not a real change. It's a short-term thing. And so that's the reason why they don't work, is because there's nothing driving you past that initial goal, and there's not enough of a driver. The other reason why people do diets is because they want to live forever. Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're not going to live forever. There is no fountain of youth. No diet is going to keep you young forever. Unfortunately, we will all die. But it doesn't mean that we have to be miserable as we die. Have you guys heard about the 95-year-old woman who got her master's degree? Or the 92-year-old man who ran a marathon? Now, you guys think that those guys might be the exceptions to the rule? That getting old should be painful and you should lose your memories and things like that? Well, actually, those guys should be the normal, and the rest of us should be the exception. So we shouldn't be aging like that. We should be like the 95 and 92-year-old. So one of the first things that we're going to have to do is change how we think about food. So, do you guys remember the food pyramid? Okay, like the 6 food groups. Well, yeah, that's gone. I'm going to tell you about that in a little bit, and the reason why that's gone. But we're going to break it down into 3 categories of foods. So everything in that chart, we're going to break down into 3 categories. You've got your carbohydrates, you've got your proteins, and you've got your fats. Now, can you guys tell me what carbohydrates do? Energy. Most people, when they think about carbohydrates, they think of energy. Now, when you guys hear the word carbohydrates, what kind of food do you think of? Exactly. Did you guys know that fruits and vegetables fall under the same category? Yeah. So I want you to think of carbohydrates now as sugars. So they're saccharides, so it's sugar. It breaks down in your body as a sugar. Now, carbohydrates can have many nutritional values, so we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Proteins is pretty straightforward. They help to build muscle, but they also help to form many functions in the body. And again, we're going to talk about that. And then the last one that we're going to talk about here is fats, one of the most misunderstood food categories that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into carbohydrates. So here are some of the functions of carbohydrates. Obviously, you all probably knew that it gives energy. Did you guys know that it helps to retain the water in your body? So it performs a pretty important function. It does that by affecting your kidneys. It affects your salt intake. It also helps to burn fat. So if you don't eat carbohydrates, so for those of the people who are on, I'm not going to eat any carbohydrates, well, good luck burning your fat. So you need that in order to burn fat. So you guys mentioned that, actually it was you who mentioned about rice. So grains. So brown rice is still good. You can have some of those other rices. But what it comes down to is you don't want things like white rice because they get high amounts of sugars that can come from that. So these are your good examples of carbohydrates. So I like brown rice personally. You can have teff, quinoa, buckwheat, things like that, sorghum, stuff like that. Fruits. You want to stick to your lower glycemic fruits, so your smaller fruits like your berries, so your raspberries, your blackberries, because those melons and strawberries and things like that have high amounts of sugar. While they taste great, they're not the most beneficial for you because if you put too much sugar in your body, you actually create inflammation, which makes you unable to lose weight. So for many of you, if you struggle with losing weight, it's probably because you have a lot of sugar in your diet and your body's not losing that inflammation. So the next one on the list is beans, and then we get starches. So the one thing I want to mention about starches, so who here knows what a good common starch is?
Potato.
Bingo. So which potato would you choose? A white potato or a sweet potato? So what would you prefer to eat? Let me rephrase that. White? Okay. So I'm going to tell you, don't eat the white potato, okay? Eat the sweet potato. White potato is very high in sugars. In fact, if you have issues with gluten, this could be one of those foods that you could be sensitive to. Dr. Rob's going to talk about that. Yeah.
Potatoes have gluten?
No, so potatoes mimic gluten. And so if you have a gluten issue, your body will attack white potato. So Dr. Rob's going to talk about that, but that's one of the reasons why you want you to avoid white potatoes. Okay? Yeah.
How about those, the yellow, that Yukon potato?
I'm not too familiar with the Yukon potato.
White potato.
It's
Is it a white potato?
It's
Yeah.
still a white potato?
Yeah.
But it's
I would just stick to sweet potato if you're going to have a starch.
The white sweet potatoes are good. I really like the white sweet potatoes.
The white
They're not
sweet-
too sweet.
Okay. All right. So you heard it here first. All right. So some examples of poor carbohydrates. Now, these are people's most common foods that they love. You've got your pastas, your cereals, your breads. These are the things that people do not want to part with. So what makes these bad besides the sugar content? Does anyone know?
Like your
What's that?
allergy, and then it's also.
Yeah, allergies can be one of them because your body has a real sensitivity to these. One of the reasons why it has to do with how it's prepared. So essentially, you're changing the protein makeup of these foods whenever you refine it. So it's not in its original form. So I put up the grain right here. So this is the grain itself whenever you take it from the fields. What they do during the refining process is they remove that outer layer. So that's a pretty important part of it. In fact, there are vitamins inside the bran layer of that grain. And all you're getting is that endosperm. So you're only getting a fraction of the nutritional value of that grain. Plus, then they place it under high heat when they cook it, and that changes the overall composition. So think of it like this. So you guys know what happens to an egg when you take it out of the fridge, right? It's liquidy. Then you stick it on a stove, what happens? It firms up. It's called denaturing. So you've changed the structure of that protein. Think of it the same way when you're refining grains. You're changing it into a form that's not very usable by your body, other than to make large amounts of sugar. So then the worst ones are your straight sugars. Now the worst of the worst is going to be that bottom one. Who here thinks that diet drinks are better for you than regular sodas and pops? Anyone? Now there's a few people out there. So it's actually worse because of something called aspartame. You guys have probably heard of it. What you guys probably don't know is what aspartame does in the body. It actually acts as a neurotransmitter in your brain, meaning that it speeds it up. So that's not good because it's not controlled by your body, and it's going to throw off the processes of your brain, which includes your immune system, food allergies, cognitive function, so how you think, even how you sleep. It's all controlled by your brain, and so that can throw that off. Now the other two is sugar, just pure concentrated sugar. High fructose corn syrup is larger amounts of it. But it's advertised as, oh, it's not bad for you. And it's in just about everything. Not just sodas, but your boxed foods. So it's in every single thing.
Before you take,
Yeah.
I've noticed that breads have been replaced with wraps. You know, is that something you recommend?
So wraps are along the same, so it's not as bad as that, but again, it's what is it made out of. So I can't say a blanket statement because wraps are made differently. So it depends on what it is. You know, if it sits on a shelf, it's probably bad for you because food shouldn't sit on a shelf and sit there for weeks at a time. And, you know, if you take food out from the field and you let it sit there, it should start to rot here at some point. That doesn't happen with stuff on the shelf. So I'd avoid it personally. So just because there's also going to be higher sugar values with that too. You had a question?
Carbohydrates, the grains, you see a lot now where it says whole grains. Is that a false positive? And
Yeah.
and then a sugar under sugar,
Yep.
there's cane sugar. I mean, there's
Same thing.
lots of different
Yep.
sugars.
So that's a very good question. So whole grains, it's been touted as this is even better for you.
Right.
It's not. It's not. I'm just going to leave it at that. Cane sugar, same thing. It's sugar. Sugar is essentially sugar to the body. Now, there are certain sources that might be better, but still, your body is going to break it down and make it into a sugar, and that's going to be utilized as your body as a sugar.
How about honey? Can you substitute it for honey?
So honey, again, that's another one that you tread on some thin ice with that, because if you do too much of it, you're going to have too much sugar. So you can have it, it's better for you than, say, your high fructose corn syrup or even some of your white sugars, but still, you don't want to be throwing in everything because then you're going to get your blood sugar going like this.
How about agave nectar?
Agave nectar is pretty good, but again,
I know my
don't.
recipe called for sugar and I substituted agave nectar.
But again, the thing is it's kind of like honey. You don't want to do too much of that. You know, it's too much of a good thing. You know, just because it's healthy doesn't mean that you should be abusing that. So.
How do you, like, what's, I mean, you know, different
A good amount.
Yeah, well, yeah, how much is
So,
not enough
so
for
as
too
little
much?
as you can get in your diet is essentially what's going to be best for you. Yeah. So if you have to add a little here and a little there, that's
Right,
okay.
Right, just,
Because what you want to avoid is your blood sugar going like this all the time.
Right.
Because that's going to keep you from losing weight. It's going to keep you from getting healthy. It's going to keep you from being pain-free. So that's what you need to avoid.
So when you eat the honey, it stops the burn of fat in the body.
Essentially, because your body it actually preferentially will burn sugars over fat. So sugars will burn first. Because they're easier and they're much more readily available.
So every time you put sugar in
If your body can't burn it right away, it will go to
That's a
fat.
good thing for us to know.
Wow.
Yeah. And in fact, you kind of, oops, wrong direction. You kind of tell us right into what this slide is all about. So when carbs enter the body, they go into sugar. Now, your body can only store 20 to 30 minutes worth of energy in the form of sugar. The rest of that you eat, so whether that's, you know, your honey or whatever else, that will go into fat. Okay? So that's a pretty important thing right there. So that's the reason why I say as little as you can eat, the better. That's the reason why we want lower glycemic foods. Now, you guys see the food pyramid here, so you're having flashbacks from school or, you know, for me it's school anyway. But can you tell me what the biggest category down at the bottom is?
Great.
Grains. Yeah. So can you guys tell me what one disease, if you have way too much sugar in your diet, what you could lead to? Diabetes. Okay. When you see someone with diabetes, oftentimes they are of what type of body type? So skinny, fat? Exactly. So what happened was, in 1992, the food pyramid came out. And obesity rates over quite a large percentage of states was fairly low. So over 40% of states had a fairly low body fat index, so an obesity rate. When that food pyramid came out, which is right down here at the bottom, what happened? Obesity rates essentially skyrocketed. That's quite a significant increase. It increased so much that by 2005, not one of those states had obesity rates under 14%. And that's all started from the food pyramid. Then it went to the food crazy pyramid, and then to the food plate. Okay. Those are what the 3 biggest epidemics facing this country are. And it really can be tied to what we've been taught to eat. All of these are preventable. You mentioned diabetes, which can lead to obesity, but obesity can lead to diabetes. Heart disease. A lot of us think that heart disease has to do with the fats that we eat. It's not. It's actually inflammation in your body. Cholesterol can be considered more of a patch because your body is being injured by the amount of inflammation that you have in your body. The vast majority of time is because you have high levels of sugar in your body, which is causing inflammation and damage in your body. So that's, yep.
Can you just go in a little more depth into when you say inflammation? I hear for several people say, what do you actually mean? I mean, I know what inflammation is, but when it happens inside your body, you're talking about blood vessels? What are you talking about?
So the blood vessels themselves will swell slightly, but they will get damaged. Now, inflammation is where you start to retain water, but you also start to release like cytokines, but they can actually damage your tissues. So inflammation is actually, think of it as swelling. So like when you sprain your knee and you get swelling, think of it like that, but throughout the rest of your body.
Organs, anything inside your body.
Pretty much anything.
Say
Yep.
it on a cellular level, what happens in the cell, each individual cell.
They're going to get larger because they're going to be retaining water. They're not going to function as well either.
Toxins won't escape.
Yeah, so that's part of the problem is that when you have obesity, so fats store hormones and toxins. That's 2 of the biggest things that fat cells store. And whenever you have high levels of fat, you're going to have high levels of toxins. This is the reason why when people go through detoxes, they feel like garbage for the first couple of days is because you started losing weight, you started releasing all these toxins into your body. And it's partially because of that inflammation that you have. You're increasing everything and you're drawing all this stuff into those cells.
Which also causes wrinkles.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
No, it does.
What causes wrinkles?
The
Toxic?
inflammation.
Or inflammation.
Sprinkles.
Sprinkles.
If it causes sprinkles, that's interesting. All right, so who here believes that if you eat less calories than you take in, that you'll lose weight?
Me?
Yeah, it's been a common thing in the fitness industry that if you eat less than you burn, you will lose weight. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. In fact, if that were the case, then this would be the easiest class to teach you how to lose weight, because all you have to do is really just eat a little bit of food, and every single one of you would lose weight. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Part of it has to do with calories and how calories are different. I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit. So, proteins.
So that last scale is not correct?
Nope.
Calories in does not equal calories out?
Nope. Not even close. All right, proteins. A little more straightforward than carbohydrates. So they're used to build muscle. They're also used to bring nutrients into your body, which is one of their most important functions. In fact, they sit in your gut and bring in the nutrients from the foods that you eat into your bloodstream. They're the gatekeepers of your cells. So if you don't have enough good proteins, you're not going to have good gatekeepers. In fact, they also help to protect your brain. So not only do you have a barrier in your gut, you also have a barrier in your brain. But the essential component are proteins. Now they're also used for energy. Now this is after sugar, so after that 20 to 30 minutes worth of sugar, then proteins are used. If you are starving, then your body will take muscle, which is protein, and turn it into an energy source. Okay. Last one, blood sugar regulation. How many of you knew that if you have protein in the morning, it will actually help to control your blood sugar levels?
Hey, your appetite's all day.
That's the reason why protein in the morning is essential. So what do you hear all the time that you should be eating in the morning?
Cereal.
Cereals, bagels,
Yogurt?
muffins,
Yogurt?
yogurt, maybe some donuts. Anyone? No? But yeah.
It should be.
No, as much as I like donuts, I'm going to say no on that one. You should have a protein source. That's why shakes are a great thing, which I'm going to give a little shout out to our shakes over there in the corner for anyone who wants to try a good shake? What are some good proteins? Anyone? Besides these guys right here. Anyone?
Besides those?
Yeah. Just those guys?
Cheese. I like cheese.
Oh.
Fish.
I was kind of hoping someone would say that. Actually, dairy is not going to be one of the good ones, and I'll tell you why here in a little bit. Your best ones are going to be your free-range meats. So chicken, turkey's pretty good. Even fish, but you don't want those little pesky buggers from the Atlantic Ocean. You want those Pacific guys. The reason why is that there's more industries along the East Coast that can contaminate some of the fishing grounds, or the breeding grounds of those fish.
You want it from the Pacific Ocean, not the Atlantic Ocean. How about farm fed?
Nope, because typically when you're dealing with a farm-fed fish, you're getting, they're getting like grains and stuff like that. So they're not eating what they're supposed to, A, and B, they're eating inflammatory food. So essentially it's making them bigger so they can sell them for more. But grain is, again, that inflammatory food, but also it has sugar components. Yep, GMOs too. So that's the reason why
So how do
farm,
you find wild fish?
you will want to go to the store and you should usually see where it comes from.
It says farm, fresh farm, and so you
Yep,
just
so it will
pass
say,
it.
it will say otherwise as well.
What?
It will say otherwise as well, so.
Wild caught, you
Yep.
could get it at Costco, everywhere.
What is it?
So
Wild caught.
usually your health food stores are gonna be much better location to be shopping for your wild fish versus your farm raised, okay?
Does the farm raised stuff not have the omega-3s either?
It's not gonna have the same nutritional values, yeah. You're gonna have more omega-6s than omega-3s just because you're having more inflammation. So, and we're gonna talk a little bit about omega-6 and omega-3s, but omega-6s are more pro-inflammatory and omega-3s are anti-inflammatory.
So grass fed is better than corn fed because
Because it's not inflammatory to the body, because grain, A is inflammatory and B is sugar, which is again inflammatory.
So you're eating inflamed cow tissue.
Plus, you also have more fat on those animals, and we're going to talk about how that fat isn't good for you either. So then you got nuts. Nuts are a great source of protein, also a good source of fat. And then non-GMO soy. So it's
non-GMO.
non-GMO, genetically modified.
Oh, this, you need to know this.
Yeah. So the vast majority of grains and pretty much agriculture out there is genetically modified. It's so that it can grow a much bigger yield, so it can be resistant to particular insects. So
Yeah.
they're modifying these grains in such a way that now it's no longer its original form. Body's going to have a harder time breaking these things down, and you're also going to decrease the nutritional value of these foods.
Is that in the little label?
Should be.
Will that,
No,
Whatever you
not on the
Sometimes,
labels.
not always.
I think if you buy soy in America, you can always assume it's all GMO.
Unless it's organic.
unless it's,
Yeah.
what did you just say, if you buy soy in
If you buy
America?
soy in the United States, it's pretty much GMO.
So you gotta go to Canada?
No, not in Canada. So in Asia, because the reason we have that up there is Asians have been eating soy for thousands of years, so how come they're so healthy? And it's because the soy that they've been eating is non-GMO and they ferment their foods much more than we do here.
All right, so
And it's fermented because we can't get the nutritional, that protein value out of it. if it's not.
yeah, because in its original form, it's actually somewhat hazardous to use. So you actually have to change the structure of that
So
supermolecule.
they're the first step. I mean, we don't, it's, do you just like summarize the whole GMO problem, how
So-
foods are genetically modified?
So genetically modified foods are essentially where you've taken two different strains, you've combined them, and you've changed the overall structure of that food. And so now it's changed its protein structures, it's changed its nutritional content, but it's also now resistant to certain things, but also makes it harder for your body to break down.
So what do you see it in? What food do we look for that in? Or is it in everything?
So pretty much most of your grains that you get out there, so like your beans, your corn, is going to be genetically modified. It's another reason really to try to avoid those. You know,
It
it's-
doesn't tell you when it is genetically modified, it only tells you when it's not genetically genetic.
Oh, right, okay.
So if it doesn't say no GMOs, it's genetically modified.
I think the key to GMO too is they use viruses to take splices of DNA from one species to splice it into another species. So potatoes, let's use potatoes for example, they'll take fish genes, take a virus, it'll inject fish genes into that potato, so now that potato won't freeze at a certain temperature.
But it will
And
swim
so-
off your plate.
Yeah. So you're essentially getting fish when you're eating potato. And so there's a problem, and then you're messing with viruses to do so.
I was told that Europe doesn't allow for GMOs. Do you guys
They
know?
don't.
Yeah. Europe doesn't allow for it.
We don't.
Europe's a lot more stringent with their regulations, a lot more stringent.
That's because they're not run by the lobbyists of America.
You break up the entire discussion right there, is the truth though.
You know, just real quick too, GMO is not the same as hybrid, just because.
That's true.
Yep.
Hybridization still has problems though, because you can make seeds that are just mostly all starch, and so,
Right, but I was at a thing where somebody was saying that GMO was the same as hybrid.
no, it's not. Hybridization is combining plants,
Right.
having, yep, and so, it's not as scary because you're not using viruses, but you still might be producing not the greatest food on earth, so.
How about fruits and vegetables? Are those GMO too?
Some can be, yeah.
You just want to scare us from eating
I am
food
really
altogether.
sorry. Yeah, but it is out there.
Is that the initials for General Mills?
General Mills, Monsanto,
Yeah.
General.
All right, so you had mentioned dairy products, so
Oh, yeah. I
that
love
falls under poor proteins. So partially because you have to look at, well, what did that animal eat? So that's going to be involved in how it made dairy, which is then going to go into your cheeses. And then you have to take a look at what happens to it after it comes out of the animal. Well, it goes through the pasteurization process. Again, it's kind of like that egg. What happens when you cook it up, you denature it. So you're causing a change in the dairy. Now pork and shellfish, I can say that word. So pork, yeah, it's got a lot of nastiness in it. I don't know if you guys saw, we posted something on Facebook a couple months back about how much pork out there has high amounts of bacteria in it. About 60+% of all the pork that's shipped to the stores has high amounts of bacteria in it. So try to avoid your pork if you can. Okay?
So if you can get pork from like a farm, it still probably has bacteria, or is that better?
Yeah, pork is very, not sensitive, but it's, you might as well just say sensitive. It's one of those foods that really has the nasty things in it. I mean, take a look at the animal itself. Look at a pig. Where does it doesn't sit? It's right there in the mud. What does it eat? It eats junk all the time. So, and again, not only are you getting all that nastiness that it's rolling around in and eating, it's eating it too. So, that's a reason to avoid pork.
I'd say too, it's a bottom feeder, it's a scavenger of the land. But if the farmer's feeding it really well and taking good care of it, it could still be somewhat of a healthy animal, but you wouldn't eat it on a consistent basis.
Most of the time, though, pork is raised in all big hog confinements, and they're
Yeah.
not allowed in, they have a certain diet, not that.
Pig barns, I would definitely avoid that meat.
Oh,
Yeah. What kind of?
Pig barns, same with turkey barns, chicken barns, all of those is what you want to avoid.
Yeah, we're essentially stating that as our last point here.
What about the shellfish?
Shellfish is just,
They're bottom feeders too.
Yeah.
They basically clean up the ocean, and the ocean's toxic, so.
Yeah, they're interesting.
plus,
I
Oh, what about,
undertake this
what about
with,
shrimp and?
Yep, all
I mean, on
bottom.
the video we were watching last night, they said shrimp in the shopping at the grocery store, shrimp and scallops were a good thing.
again, you don't want to have it every single meal. So again, like you said, bottom feeders, you can have it occasionally, but this shouldn't be a staple of your diet.
They're high in a fat called arachidonic acid, which is pro-inflammatory too. So. What were you going to say, Cheryl?
The Bible has the
Yeah, those are the spiritually unclean
pyramid
foods.
of
Yeah.
what's right to eat. And if you look at that, it's nothing that eats another animal. And if you look at shellfish, they eat other animals. Because they will
They'll eat
In some
anything.
dies, they're down there snarfing on it and whatever, and pigs, they'll eat they'll eat flesh too, and, you just kind of go, that makes sense, you know, and all, even catfish and everything like that too, because it doesn't have skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely those bottom feeders right there. So I'm gonna kind of skip over this fat protein because we've probably already covered that. We've had a bunch of questions on that.
Oh, what's processed nuts? What's processed
Baked.
nuts?
Baked, yeah,
Baked?
yeah. So you,
So,
Boiled.
well,
yeah, pretty much, you know, if it's been prepared in any way, you want something that's not been prepared. You want
That's
Raw.
the difference between raw almonds and the really good
Roasted,
tasting
like
ones.
There's a reason why they're really good tasting.
We're not supposed to have cooked nuts.
Like
Oh, I knew
roasted?
that.
No.
Now they say
Roasted.
if you roast them yourself, that's probably different, but how they roast them, they,
They throw a little something on them too. What do you think they taste so good?
Yeah, but now I heard you're supposed to soak them first. Did you guys hear that too? You're supposed to soak your almonds? And now you can get, now you can get sprouted almonds
They just kind of
from, like
Deer
this.
in the headlights.
You're sitting here like this, Karen. Probably not a good thing.
No, that's.
What's the difference between sprouted almonds and regular almonds?
Sprouted almonds?
Oh, like when
They're
there's
so,
$14.95
I just eat my
or it's
regular-
$8.95.
I know, I figured it was better.
they're
The
just
price,
so
is that what you said?
overnight.
Price is-
Basically just buy the most expensive thing you can
Yeah, oh
find.
yeah,
in a
and then you
store.
can't afford to eat,
That's
yeah.
my daughter, right there.
It's not only.
So you can roast your own nuts?
Yes.
So why, what do they do at the factories that,
So it depends on which one, but oftentimes they're adding something to the roasting process. They're not usually just sticking it in an oven and cooking it for a little bit and then shipping it out. You have to take a look what else is in there. All you have to do is read the label. So,
All the words you can't understand.
well, usually it
pretty
says,
much.
doesn't it just say peanuts, salt?
Usually there's something else with that. If it says natural flavorings, that is typically an MSG. So it says natural flavorings, don't believe them.
Wow.
Yep.
I heard peanuts are not good for you, is that true?
So for certain individuals, peanuts might not be beneficial, especially if you are dealing with inflammation and things. So if you're dealing with like a chronic disease like we see at the office, peanuts are going to be one of those you're going to want to avoid because they are a little tougher for your body to digest. So that would be a reason.
they're not nuts either.
Yeah.
They're not?
Legumes.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're what?
They're legumes.
Which is surprising because it's got the word nut.
So are cashews though too.
Yeah.
Cashews are legumes?
Legumes.
Why are they called
Legumes are good. Cashews and peanuts are legumes.
All right, before we spend all night talking about peanuts, those guys, let's
I'm
move
sorry,
on
my
to
dominating.
fats. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them afterwards and get them asked right now, okay? So fats, pretty important. You know, you've probably heard of low-fat diets or just cut out fats in general because you're going to get heart disease. Well, you need fats. In fact, fats are what help your nerves send signals. They're the covering of the nerves. So if you don't have fat, you're not going to get proper nerve flow. It's also an important component to your brain. Pretty important there. Also, fats are essential to bring in vitamins A, vitamins D, E, and K. So no fat, those vitamins don't get into your body, and we're going to talk about vitamins A and D here in a little bit. It's pretty important. Also helps to regulate hormones. So let's go ahead and jump into our other myth that we have here. So good fats, bad fats. So you usually hear about saturated fats, trans fats, unsaturated fats, but you also hear about, when you're looking at cholesterol, you got cholesterol, triglycerides, LDLs, and HDL. So you hear about how the two fats are interacting. Well, I want you to separate the two. So we're not going to talk about LDL, HDL, triglycerides, or cholesterol, but we're going to talk about the saturated fats, things like that. So there are such a thing as good fats and bad fats, but not when we're talking about the body. Here in the diet, yes there is, but when we talk about the body, no there isn't. Okay, so best dietary fats. Pretty straightforward, I see. So your fish, again, it's that Pacific fish. You want your wild fish. Okay, none of these farm-raised buggers or these Atlantic ones. Flax seeds are really good. They have a lot of nutritional value in them. Well, that's avocados. Yeah, avocado in smoothies here. Only thing about avocados is they can be a little tender if you let them sit out, so use them right away. And then extra virgin olive oil. I want to get to bad fats here real quick. So other good fats are going to be almonds. Talked about almonds, but not your baked almonds. Sorry, guys.
Dang it.
I know. I'm getting all the fun out of this, aren't I?
Yes.
So you've got filberts. Does anyone know what a filbert looks like?
It's a hazelnut, right? No,
It's kind of like a hazelnut. Yeah, it is. I looked it up. I had to know. So it does not look like the almond, though, and it's not that coconut-looking thing. So they are a little larger than an almond. But yeah,
And not as big as a coconut.
yeah, but not as big as a coconut. That doesn't really help a lot. I should have had a picture of a filbert.
So where do you get those?
The store.
Actually, I looked for filberts recently and I couldn't find them in the store.
Which store did you go to? That was the wrong store. I would check your.
Probably like Whole Foods.
Yeah, I was just going to say you want to check more of your Whole Foods. So they're probably going to be a little harder to find. Same thing with probably your hazelnuts. They're not your most common nut or your peanut or anything either. So, and then coconut butter. Butter, it can be good. However, also be bad. So just want to drop that in there. Bad fats, vegetable oil.
Wait, what'd you say about butter?
So butter is important, but you know, if you have an allergy to it, it can be bad. So butter can be good, but because it has fat in it, so it's bringing in nutrients. So you can use some butter. I like a little bit of butter on my veggies. So,
Probably make sure though that it's grass-fed.
and see
I know,
that's
that's
again, and that's where that comes in, is that you have to look at how the animal ate, because that's going to affect the product itself.
How about the butter substitutes, but I can't believe it's not butter.
No.
It's plastic.
Actually, so they said that like margarine was close to plastic. I actually did some research. It's actually not close to plastic.
Okay.
So it doesn't have any nutritional value, really. I mean, it has some, but it's all inserted into it. It isn't very easily digested by your body. So butter is hands down better than margarine, or I can't believe is not butter.
So, okay, so if something isn't processed by your body, then it's eliminated, so therefore it doesn't go into your cells, so there's nothing really wrong with it. It's like
Not
eating a rock.
necessarily. So if your body can't process it, it means that it can't process it nutritionally. Now, your body can bring in these things. It can bring in the fats. It can bring in the other elements as well, because there are going to be toxins and things too. That will get into your body. So, you know, it's just like, you know, there's no real nutritional value to McDonald's, right? But if you go eat McDonald's and it passes right through you, do you think some of that got absorbed into your body?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the same thing applies. Okay? All right, so vegetable oil would sound good because it's got the word vegetable in it, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not so good. So, again, highly processed, lots of additives in there. You've also got trans fats, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your saturated fats. Another one, palm oil kind of falls under the same category as vegetable oil. So I really want to get to right here, so your types of fats. All right, so you've got your saturated fats, you've got your trans fats, you've got your unsaturated. So all that stuff is really talking about is kind of like the chemical structure of it. So saturated fats is we're talking about the bonds of the molecule itself. So saturated fats have a large amount of calories associated with it because the energy that comes from breaking the bonds of that particular molecule. Trans fats are produced, you know, essentially not in a lab, but they're produced. They're not naturally occurring. So this is going to be the stuff that you cook your French fries in. Now, I already dropped a little hint that if you have trans fats, if you have less than 0.5 grams of trans fats, they don't actually have to advertise for it. So you could go to McDonald's, and if you have less than 0.5 grams of trans fats on your French fries, hey, guess what? Trans fat free. So
Why do they use trans fats on French fries rather than olive oil?
because trans fats can actually be used more frequently, so that oil can be used with multiple French fry containers, whereas you have to replace the other one more frequently. That's why. So your unsaturated fats, this is your great one. So this is where your omega-6s, your omega-3s come from. Now, Carrie already talked a little bit about omega-6s and omega-3s. Omega-6s are good for your body because you need those to have inflammation for if you have an injury. But unfortunately, we have way too much of it in our diet. We need omega-3s in our diet, and this is where fish comes into play. They're very good with omega-3. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. Now, there should be a certain balance between omega-6s and omega-3s. So it should be a 1-to-1 to a 5-to-1 ratio, 6 to 3. Unfortunately, here in the US, our diets are more like 15-to-1 or 25-to-1. So it's no wonder that we are dealing with obesity rates. We can't lose weight. We feel like garbage. It's because we're driving up that inflammation with omega-6s. Okay? All right. So I've talked about 3 major categories. Now, these are just a few of the really important micronutrients. So micro, obviously small amounts of these nutrients. Now, these are very, very important. Calcium is used for muscle contraction. It's also used in bone. Potassium is also used in muscular contractions, but also deals with the nerves. Magnesium is known as the greatest natural relaxant, but it also is involved in 300 enzyme reactions in your body. So it is essentially important. Now, the vast majority, even those top 3, you can get from kale, maybe spinach, those green vegetables. That's the reason why they're so important. They're packed with micronutrients. Iron, it's what forms your red blood cells. If you don't have enough iron in your diet, you're going to get anemic. You're not going to be able to transport blood, or not transport oxygen with that blood. You're not going to be able to transport nutrients very well because you can't form proper blood cells. Vitamin A, that deals with your eyes. So that's pretty important. Vitamin D, just about every single cell has some sort of requirement for a B vitamin. So cell metabolism, so the cell making energy.
Are you saying D's in boy or D's in dog?
B, vitamin B. Vitamin D has a whole host of important processes. It can deal with mood elevating. It's the reason why you have seasonal depression. You're not getting enough vitamin D. But it also brings in calcium into your body. If you don't have vitamin D, no matter how much calcium you bring in, you're not going to get it. Now, I did forget to mention with calcium. Who here thinks that the best source of calcium comes from dairy products? No one? Come on.
Well, we're afraid now.
Oh,
Bill.
So I was told this by
Grass-fed.
my 8-year-old. Well, that's the best source of calcium. I've heard from a few other people too. It's not. And we've been taught that. Aaron mentioned that earlier about agriculture essentially leading the way with what we're told is healthy. It's not. Your green vegetables have a much higher source of calcium in there. Okay? I haven't got any quick questions on that. I can tell you a little bit more about those afterwards if you want. Water. Water is huge. Now, it's about 62 to 65% of your body weight is water. So as a kid, though, it's 75 to 80-some% of your body is water. So if you're not drinking enough water, you're not nourishing your body. Every single cell requires water. Just think about it. If you don't have enough water in your system, your bloodstream is going to become thick and you're not going to be able to transport things through your system. And then you're going to develop disease, you're not going to get oxygen to your cells. It's vitally important. And so that's the reason why you need half your body weight in ounces every single day. If you work out, you need a little bit more. So they say that if you work out, weigh yourself before, weigh yourself after. Drink that much in order to replace the water that you've lost. It's essential. In fact, that alone can make you feel better. Yeah.
And another thing too, especially here in Minnesota, we think we get chapped lips and dry hands because of the weather and everything, but it's because we don't drink enough water. We increase our water in the wintertime, which we don't think about, you won't have as dry hands, you won't need the chaps to on your lips.
Well, think about what do you do when you guys get cold? Do you go to Caribou, maybe Starbucks, get something warm, maybe something with some caffeine in it, something like coffee, teas, things like that. That's going to draw water out of your system. So essentially, you're making yourself even more dehydrated. Many people complain of headaches around the winter holidays and things like that. Dehydration.
I had a question back to the water.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be you just drink water, but now what kind of water? Bottled
So your filtered water. Bottled water, the only problem with that is, so A, you don't know which spring typically it comes from. So I've heard of some places they just, stick it in a sink, hey, And it's from a spray, I don't know where, but somewhere. And then the plastics themselves can actually release estrogens into the water, and so that can actually cause a whole host of other issues.
So filtered water.
So filtered water, I like the pure water filter. You can do
Like you
your-
just filter it yourself.
Yeah. Yep, so you can also use like reverse osmosis. You don't want distilled water though. You don't want distilled water.
What about like a Brita?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine,
Why not distill?
because it removes everything. Anyone else? Did you have a question, Jim?
I was gonna ask about reverse osmosis, I thought that removed everything, even the good stuff.
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing that I'm aware of that removes everything is going to be the distillation process. Nope, actually, your food plate was the next one. Sorry, I lied to you. All right, so this is a guideline. This is not how you should follow with each and every one of you. So this is a good place to start. Now, you see a good chunk of that is carbs. That does not mean breads. That does not mean, oh, sweet, I mean, I can have that much brown rice. No. That is going to be your veggies, okay? So that's going to be your colorful veggies. Proteins, and then your fats. That looks like a pretty large volume of fat, huh? Yeah, it's a lot more than you've been told to eat. In fact, you've been told to have a low-fat diet. You actually need a lot of fat in your diet, so you can burn fat. It's also your nutrients. Now again, this is just a guideline. Each of you is going to be slightly different. So you got the numbers in your notes right there. So this is the reason why I said calorie counting does not work. 2,000 calories of that burger right there is not going to be the same for your body as 2,000 calories of that salad. It does not work like that. So yes, there is a certain amount of energy, but your body utilizes both of them significantly differently. But one, the vast majority of that is going right here, or wherever your favorite fat storage spot is. That right there, that's going to be used as fiber, it's going to be used as nutritional value, it's going to be used as protein, it's going to be used to build you up and help to repair your body. The other is only going to make you sicker. So, sounds like I've taken all the fun out of food and eating, right? It's because really what we're focusing on is we're so focused on food and the journey to eating healthy. And so we really have to shift our perspective. If all you ever focused on was the stairs, would you ever really make it to the top? You're like, man, I can't go another step. Well, maybe you're one step from the top. You're one step from looking out over what you've accomplished. So don't focus so much on the journey itself, but focus on the end goal. It's like a runner. Yes, you have to focus some on the journey, but they're going to be focusing on that goal at the end. They run for the prize at the end. That's what you need to do when you're eating. Yes, it's tough. Just like climbing all those stairs to get up to that mountaintop. But it's going to be worth it in the end. Your health is worth it in the end. And a great passage here is in Galatians, where it talks about, let us not grow weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. It's going to be the same thing that applies to you. If you don't give up with your health, you will reap a harvest of health. Okay? So I mentioned that this weekend is going to be about a component to that. So you can consider everything that we've talked about today as like an ingredient list. And this weekend, we actually get to make what we've talked about. So we put all the ingredients into a bowl. It's going to sit there until we get there this weekend. So we're going to talk about these four things. We're going to talk about planning. And how if you don't plan, you're going to fail. It's just like if you go into combat and you don't have a plan, you're not going to accomplish it. Or if you go on a family vacation, but you're like, we're just going to kind of go somewhere, and hey, you didn't know there was a sports tournament in town, so you can't find a hotel. You know, if you don't plan, you're going to miss out, and you're going to lose. So then, planning is going to allow you to shop. Now, one of the biggest things with shopping is don't go inside the middle of the store. So I like to think of it like this. So who here has seen a horror movie or a scary movie? And you've told the person, don't go down the stairs. Has anyone ever said that? Don't go down the stairs? They don't listen. They go down the stairs. What happens to them? They end up dying. So think about the inside of the store as the scary part. Don't go to the center of the store. Okay? Don't be that guy that goes down the stairs. Don't be that guy. Also, don't be the guy who goes there hungry, because I guarantee you, you're going to eat a whole lot of stuff that you weren't intending. you're gonna buy a whole lot of nastiness, okay? And try something new every week, and that's always a good one. And then, if you have a busy week, prepare it when you get home. Chop up your veggies, mix up everything if you need to, because if you're busy, you're not gonna wanna do it. And then remember that food plan, and then cooking. Try something new every week. Also, if you're cooking, why not make 2 meals instead of 1? So that way you can have multiple things and you don't have to cook tomorrow. So plan out in advance. And then avoid microwaves. Does anyone know why to avoid microwaves?
Tell us.
Because it eliminates all the nutritional value. So Aaron can tell you about an experiment that he did when he was in chiropractic school about the amount of nutrition that was lost from one cooking process to the microwaving process. You essentially lose the vast majority of the nutritional value with that. All right, so your recipe for success. So this is your ingredient list for the rest of your life. First of all, you're eating for 3. So yourself, your family, and God. And remember, you're eating to live, not living to eat. Remember that food can become a god. So don't put it first. Don't let it be your master. And then eat foods that you were designed to eat. Natural foods, not synthetically prepared, not boxed foods. Yeah, more lean cuisines. And then the 4 steps that you're going to learn on Saturday. Saturday is going to be very important for you to take it from the information stage right now to implementing this for the rest of your lives. So I can't say it enough. Saturday is very, very important. So with that thought in mind, for those of you that know you can make it, sign up in the back. So we know how many people are coming.
Is that right here?
Yes.
At 9?
Schedule.
Yes. 9 to 10. Yep. If you can't, you can still show up even if you don't sign up. Please bring friends and things like that, okay?
What are we gonna do in that hour?
So you're going to go over the plan, the shop, prepare. In fact, she's going to talk about how you can even do it with your family, okay? Now, before I let you go, because I've taken you a little longer with some questions and all, but I want to tell you about, it's a Facebook page. It's 100 Days of Real Food. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that Facebook page. And it's where this family of 4 decided they would take a pledge not to eat any refined foods. They would not have any sugars or anything like that in their diet for 100 days. And they cataloged it for 100 days. It was tough. There were a few accidents along the way, but they were able to do it. So if they were able to do it, I guarantee you, every single one of you can. 100 days, because after 100 days, the likelihood of you going back drops significantly. For them, they didn't want to go back to the way they ate before because they felt so much better. The same thing for you guys if you start down a journey like that. By the time you get to that 100 days, now you don't have to do 100 days, it could be 60 days, it could be 90 days. But you will feel significantly better and you won't want to go back to the way you were eating before. So I'm actually going to do that here myself pretty quick. I'm going to be doing a 90-day challenge. I'm going to start off with a detox that we talked about you guys with day 1, with one of the clear vine detoxes. And I'm going to report what I'm going through with that. So feel free to do it with me, because I want to make over my life too. So just because I'm up here talking about it doesn't mean I have things I can't improve upon. So I know after 90 days of that, I'm not going to want to go back to what I'm doing right now. So, okay, does anyone else have questions or comments? Yeah?
What about coconut milk? Because it's a dairy, but yet it's coconut.
Coconut milk, I like coconut milk. The only thing that I'd watch would be some of the sugar that might be put in there. I have a little more issue with sometimes rice milk has a little bit more sugar, but coconut milk, especially if someone wants to have a replacement for milk, say under whatever they're eating milk in. So almond milk, rice milk, coconut milk, yeah, those are fine.
What is rice milk and almond milk?
Basically, it's just the
You
most
never seen
honest-
anyone milk a rice?
That was my question without asking the question.
So they have these machines where you stick an almond in there, it's got a suction cup, and it's
So nobody can answer the question, which is,
Smushed up almonds?
It's probably liquefied. I mean, if you stick something in, you know, the Ninja, or you stick, you know, something in the what is it?
It's not the whole thing though.
No,
It's
it's
just
not.
the water that's taken out of it.
Right.
So,
They GMO it.
There's nothing.
Yeah, I'm sure it
It's
is.
not
Soy,
Just so they don't roast them first.
so, yeah, so then like soy milk, is that probably gonna be all GMO?
probably yes.
We'll probably stay away from that.
Yes. Yes.
What about canola oil? I was watching the video, I saw they took what separated oils, but it didn't say anything about canola oil.
Canola oil typically isn't that a vegetable oil?
Is it?
It's a seed,
Okay.
and it's
Oh, so it's
definitely
not-
GMO'd.
Oh, it is
It's-
GMO.
oh, yeah. It used to be called rapeseed, and then they changed it to now it's called canola.
Okay, so we shouldn't eat that either?
Nope.
So it was essentially originally.
So what do you put in your salad dressings?
Are we gonna learn this on Saturday, what we can eat?
Yes, yes.
Yay. Like between now and Saturday.
We
we
You can have grass-fed beef and grass-fed steaks. I mean, I can live off steaks for the rest of my life. I think I could. And then chicken, turkey, fish. Yeah,
How do you feed your kids when they're starving, like right now, and
that's why you have to have a plan. That's where the planning comes into play. You have to have a plan. Because that's time is when you're rushed, that's the time where you're going to eat the worst. That's why planning is so important.
It's very quick to make one of those smoothies.
yep, I'm gonna do that.
So my breakfast is good. So we should probably break up into our groups here real quick. I know you're gonna run over a little bit with your groups, so let's go ahead and break up into those groups and, yeah.
Did you want to break them up? Did you have anything to say?
The only thing I wanted to comment on was that we do have the Daniel Plan website, you know, for this group, and there are some great videos on there about food and about the food industry. So if you want to know more in depth about what Dr. Samuelson talked about today, and if you're interested more in that GMO concept or what has happened to the food supply in the last 50 years, great videos on the Daniel Plan website.
So there's a Daniel Plan website and then there's one for this group?
Daniel Plan Facebook.
Yeah, there's a Daniel Plan website put out by Saddleback, and then
That's
we have a Daniel Plan.
danielplan.com.
So which one do we look on?
Both.
Well, both. And then the Facebook site is,
Yeah, the Facebook site, what I would encourage you, this would be a great place. You're probably going to leave with more questions than you came in with. So put those questions on, we'll answer them.
Yep.
So,
Okay,
and then everybody else can
Page.
see them.
What-
Yeah.
You go on Facebook,
Yep, and then type in, it's going to be Leo Dan, so it's www.facebook.com/Leo
wait,
Dan.
slow down.
We'll put the link back on the,
We'll send it out.
we'll send an email to you.
Did you
So
get
go
our
on
emails?
Facebook, and then
Do you have our,
join the
did you get our emails?